Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Jan Marinsky. I am a Flatcar maintainer, and this meeting here is it's the first one in a series of open discussions we're hosting for basically coming up with two new governing bodies for Flatcar project itself. One is a steering committee, and the second one is a technical committee. Both of these bodies are supposed to help Flatcar be a more mature project, help it grow, maintain its ways, and basically make our lives easier, both for the maintainers and for our users. And this video is going to be in a form of long open session where everyone can join. It's going to be 3 hours. The next one is going to be next week on Tuesday, 14th of July, and next one is going to be on the 16th, Thursday. Also 3 hours where everyone can join. We'll write down their opinions and basically, hopefully, after all this time, reach a compromise on how this should be governed. Okay. Thanks for everyone. Thanks to everyone for joining. And I think we can start. I'm going to try to share my screen. And I've been having difficulties with it recently all the time. So let's see how it goes. Okay, I guess I should share both the document and our post with questions. Okay. Hi, everyone. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know. You should be able to see my screen with the document and the GitHub post. Time. Is it working? Hello? Can anyone hear me?
Yes, everything works.
Okay, perfect. Let me just confirm. Okay, I can see our stream is also working, so that's great. Cool. So let's start. So let's go through this. So how would you guys like to do it? Would you like to go first through the documents? They're much shorter than the questions, and we can talk about like where this is coming from, what is more or less the impact that each decision would have, and kind of where we got, where is the inspiration coming from? Does that sound good? I'll take that as a yes. Okay, so first of all, both of our drafts for the steering committee and the technical committee come from a few open source projects. A few open source projects that are somehow similar to Flatcar. One is Kubernetes, and one is Istio. Both of them are part of CNCF and are in kind of our community, our space. They have similar environments, both when it comes to community and the actual tech surrounding it. So this document here has all three documents here listed, just glued together. One of them, the first one here, is describing the Flatcar steering committee, mainly basically what it does and what it is. Now, the second here is describing something that is very, very important, which is how the elections happen, which is also very important. And also in the first one, we're describing how who can actually be part of that committee. Now, the reason why this topic in general is very, very important is that this basically creates the scope of who can actually make decisions, right? And well, the next question, of course, is what are these decisions? So I think we can start. So this document describes what the Flatcar Steering Committee is for, what it does, all of that. And the mission of that committee is to be responsible for non-technical things of the project. right? So this is not going to be deciding, are we throwing out the Verity for something else when it shows up, right? This is not the scope here. Um, it handles governance, committee structure, project resources, and long-term direction, right? So, think about our relationship with maybe some upstream, downstream in a more project way, or how we organize our stuff with CNCF, right? Or how do we get sponsoring, or our brand image, right? This is really the scope. So the committee can more or less kind of steer itself and adjust its role. Um, the technical decisions are still left to the technical committee, which is very important, and the day-to-day running of the project is. Oops, I think I should be so that I do not have any pop-up messages. I'm on Windows. I don't know how to do that. No, should we stop messaging? Sorry. Um, Basically, uh, what is very important here is that the day-to-day operations of the project are not part of the responsibilities of this committee, right? So imagine we need to make a governance decision on, for example, um, which other cloud that we need to use for our infrastructure do we reach out to, or maybe there's some big user that would like to talk to us, give us feedback, right? Or help us in an integration. We first go through that channel and talk to them because it's more of a project oriented management question, and then we kind of dive deeper into technicals, right? um, and I guess the last important thing is that this is really where the uh, escalations go to. Haitla. So, for example, you can imagine that there is some kind of an issue, for example, with code of conduct within the project, right? This is where it would go if things needed to be escalated, right? Like, someone in the community being very toxic, stuff like that. Now, so do we? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
This is great because we currently have kind of an informal group, COC at flatcar.org, I think. It would be great to have something like a formal body that's well defined, because currently it's there, but no one knows about it and it's not well defined. Awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you. And just by the way, to get already started, we are going through the document, basically spelling things out and later gathering ideas and comments. Okay, so are there any other questions so far from you guys? No? Okay, cool. So the next thing is what the steering committee does not do, right? This is very important. This is something that I feel like was most of the feedback I've gathered throughout the last few weeks when it comes to drafting this proposal. So things like, for example, this is something, by the way, that other projects give the power to the steering committee. We would not, based on the feedback so far. There is, for example, creating, renaming, archiving, transferring repositories in Flatcar. We have quite a lot of them. They are usually, buckets for our projects or whatever part of infrastructure automation we have, and basically going through a committee like that would be just very time consuming. One could even say annoying, right? So this is something we explicitly want to leave out of what they do, and basically just leave it to the day-to-day operations of the maintainers. The next one is granting or adjusting normal project access for maintainers, contributors, subgroups. This is more of a automation question, IAM, stuff like that. This is also not something that they would be doing, right? So, for example, you can imagine that, especially now with some of the governance, sorry, especially now with the governance restructuring, we might come up with a few more maintainer groups or subgroups, right? You can imagine that asking a few people to say yes to every small decision of who gets added where, which repository is under which group, all that is not very efficient, right? So this is something we want to leave out. Running CI automation, bots, and tooling needed for normal project work. I think this is self-explanatory. Running releases, triaging issues, reviewing pull requests, basically the day-to-day work. The steering committee should only step in when a matter is project-wide, non-technical, or explicitly escalate to it, which is what Tilo mentioned, and I think it's very, very important here. Okay. Any questions here? And I'm gonna take a sip and catch my breath.
And just because people get the term escalation wrong, it's probably worth elaborating on a small paragraph on that. I can provide that if you like.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
You can continue. I can I'll do it.
Okay, absolutely. So going forward, responsibilities of the actual committee would be setting and defending the non-technical vision, mission, and values of the project, right? So we can, for example, imagine being open source as one of the values of the project, right? Oh, hi, Robin. Thank you for joining us. Defining and evolving. So by the way, we're basically going through the document, reading it line by line, and kind of providing feedback on kind of what here matters and why, and what is the implication, and gathering questions so far. And later we will be gathering opinions on the written down questions in here in the post. So right now we're at responsibilities of the committee. So the committee would be, like I said, defending basically the vision of the project, what it stands for, right? So for example, you can imagine someone maybe trying to have some influence and maybe not make Flatcar free and open source, which would be kind of an absurd thing to do, but this is where they would step in, right? Defining and evolving the project's governance structure. This is also something very important, especially if our project grows, or if you want to put it in a positive way, when our project grows. This is also something they would handle. Creating and approving charters for project-wide groups such as committees, working groups, and subgroups. So they would create them, right, approve them. However, managing, for example, IAM automation for who actually gets added where this is not something they would be doing. However, approving one, for example, the one that Sam mentioned before we started recording, would be something they would be doing. Acting as the final escalation point for non-technical disputes in the project. This is something that Tilo was writing a paragraph on. Basically, TLDR, if there's a drama, they would handle it, right? I think this is a way to look at it. Acting as the final, sorry about that. Managing the project's relationship with CNCF and the other outside bodies, advising on trademark, branding, advocacy, and, whoops, sorry, it's moving for me, and non-technical project matters. Holding and delegating authority over project-wide assets such as GitHub, organization, ownership, websites, domain, etc., and defining what it means for a project to be in good standing and enforcing those expectations. Any questions so far? Okay, let's move on. Working with the technical committee. So the technical direction is in the technical committee's hands. And this here outlines a little bit of how the steering committee and the technical committee work with each other. The technical direction, architecture, cross-cutting engineering decisions are handled by the technical committee. The steering committee does not overrule technical decisions. When a matter has both technical and non-technical aspects, the steering committee and technical committee are expected to work together, each deciding the parts that fall under their own remit. I must have copied that because I did not know that word. Remit. To send or transmit. Okay, interesting. Next, here is something that is very important. Oh, any questions so far? Okay, remit means authority. I can maybe later change that to a simple word. So this here is something that is very, very important. And that is basically this section here. Now that outlines who gets to be in that committee, what size it's going to be, how are the seats going to be aligned or not aligned at all. Is it going to be an odd number or an even number, which makes sense. X is 10 and 1. Well, yes, I guess everything is a 10 so far. However, X here stands, yeah, just to clarify, X here stands for a variable that we can decide on. These here, so if you take a look here, for example, right, it's an X. So you can directly see that as a question in here, right? So for example, this is the steering committee. No worries. No, I, when I was writing that, like, obviously X means a variable, but now that I think about it, like, it could for someone mean that it's 10 people. So that's a good call out. So here, for example, right, how many seats should the steering committee have? Right, this is a question that is directly linked to this line here. Now, in here in the post, I provided summarizations of how the two projects that we're mainly based on when it comes to this draft are doing it. So, for example, Kubernetes has 7 selected seats, and Istio has 13, which is quite a lot. Like, and basically, this is the main reason why you're all here, right? So it's to provide input on what do you think about these particular questions, right? So if you see an X, think it's an open-ended question, and here is equivalent, you can just simply post your answers in here and basically just say, well, question 6, I think it should be 9 or 5 or whatever, right? This is the idea. So going forward, any questions so far? Also, the first character.
No.
Yes, Sad?
No questions.
Okay, cool. So this is the first major question that we're gonna have and have to answer. The next one is the seat types. So the steering committee may include one or more categories of seats, such as contributor seat, committee seat, or something else, right? The exact number of and type of seats is X, right? So, for example, let me find the appropriate question for this in here. Yes. So, for example, Kubernetes uses one class of selected member. However, for example, Istio splits the steering committee seats into contribution seats, community seats, and that basically later tells you who is allowed to join the committee, right? Therefore, have some kind of a power in your project, and how that should be divided, right? So we can imagine, for example, this is a eligibility question. However, are we going to have a limit on per company basis? Is that going to be a proportional thing, or maybe just one person from a company and that's it, right? This is basically something, there's a lot of details that we need to discuss and compromise on. Some of them are more, some of them are less impactful, but there's still something to be discussed and accepted by you, that is the maintainers, right? Because you're going to be all voting on this at the end, not me. I mean, me included. Same for the core CNCF steering committees. Yes. Next, so the eligibility, which is something I mentioned already. So eligibility stands for the steering committee as X, right? Eligibility to vote in steering committee elections is X, right? So for example, can just everyone vote in these elections, right? We just post a poll on Twitter and that's it, or X it's called now. Or is it, something else you have to register, right? This is a question we need to answer, right? And here you can find these questions and basically find the answers from Kubernetes and Istio to just give you some kind of a inspiration. Terms, so members serve X year terms, right? So is it 1 year, 2 years? Same question. A member may serve for at most X consecutive years, blah, blah, blah. Basically, again, like with a politician, right? Their term, what is the setting for that, right? Is it running out for KS?
Rolling. I mean, basically, like you saw, suppose I get selected this year, I have 2 terms left, but then other people might have just 1 term left, and then for the remaining seats, they will give vote. Or
I don't remember from right now, but I think they did have something about it, and maybe like after 2 terms, the next one is not rolling automatically, and you just step down, something like that. I'm sorry, I do not remember all of the 54 questions and their answers. So you should be able to find them here. If not, let me know, because you should be able to.
got it.
Any other questions? Okay. Moving forward, the company representation. This is an important one, right? So, do we accept a fact where a single company has a sizable share of these seats, or is it totally prohibited by us, right? So, if a member leaves before the end of their term, blah blah blah, what is the removal procedure, right? What do we do with emeritus status, and also finally voting, right? So the steering committee should aim to work by consensus whenever possible, when a vote is needed, right? So what are the percentages, right? This also calls back to the number of the actual seats, right? So if we say that 51% is needed, and there's doesn't work perfectly with my analogy, but like you can imagine, if there's an odd number, right, you will always have a majority with a yes or no decision, and with an even number, you can have 50-50. Sam?
For emeritus, isn't like everyone who is there on the board stays on the emeritus, but they don't have much say, maybe, or like, and they don't have any privileges, but it's just for as a token of their work they have done on the steering committee.
Peter? By the way, guys, if you have a question, just cut me off. Like, it's gonna be much more efficient.
I think Cyan has somewhat of a point. It's somewhat of a privilege, and it's a kind of a marker that you've been in that committee. In the Flatcar project, we have the concept of emeritus maintainer, and I'm not saying that we're doing the same here, but we might take an idea from that. So if you decide to become an emeritus maintainer, or if the active maintainers vote you into emeritus because you haven't shown up for a year, all that happens is you're being removed from the respective GitHub groups, so you don't have access anymore. You're removed from the maintainers file, and you get your special place in the emeritus maintainers file. Now, this is alive in the emeritus maintainers file, and should you ever decide to pop up again years after that happened, it only takes 1 PR to restore all of your privileges. That was the original idea. I don't think that kind of scales for the steering committee, but maybe, we take ideas from that.
Okay, that's very. Thank you for bringing this up. Actually, let me just. I'm gonna try to find the original documents in case we need to compare against them. So I'm gonna just post these, although I thought they were already posted here. Okay. Thank you. So let's move on. So the voting here, right? Basically, what is the percentage, right? How are these votes structured? The meetings. So how do they actually meet, right? Are they open, close, a mix of both? What is the quorum that is needed for? And so on. And of course, how do we actually change parts of that mechanism? Now here is the second part. Now the second part is the steering committee elections, and that is actually talking about how do we do these elections, right? So Um, there's just a lot of questions, honestly. So, for example, the eligibility of a candidate, right? Who is eligible to vote? All of these questions here that need to be answered. The seat allocation, again, the election method. So, for example, is it just listing of how many votes each person has, and then we just pick like 7 with the highest number, right? Or is it more complicated? Yes, Anne?
I don't know about the methods, but I usually like the voting where you you have to rank each candidates.
Oh, yeah. I heard about this one. I think it's very good.
I think it's a rank choice maybe, but I
Yes,
think
yes, yes.
you have to give importance to the others as well. So you get like, even if you are voting pitching for one, the others you have to rank them. So you have to give some thought into it.
Yeah, so like if like I remember seeing those videos online of like when I vote for Tiger, right? But like if he doesn't win, I'm gonna go with Gorilla, right? Stuff like that. I think this is very good, and we could use that. Personally, I did not know how we could implement that in a semi-automated way. We can research
Mm.
that, or just
There are
create
tools. I
websites.
mean, all the most of the portals. I mean, when Thilo stood up for the elections, it was on, I think, on the similar way that the elections happened, and we can probably look around for. There are tools which can help us do these things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying that I'm not familiar with them, so but we can definitely find some, or even write ourselves. We're software engineers after all. Uh, Thank you. So going forward, the company presentation, of course, which is something we mentioned already, and the operations of the actual elections, vacancies, and their questions. Now, the final part of this is the technical committee, right? So this is the committee that is supposed to be making decisions about the technical aspects of the project, right? So they're not concerned with branding, for example, with our stance with CNCF Foundation or other projects, right? This is purely technical, right? So, for example, going back to that example I gave at the beginning, imagine that there's a hip new thing that is going to replace the Inverity, for example, right, in Flatcar, and someone is proposing that, right? Are we going to do that or not, right? This is where this kind of a question would land, because it's a project-wide matter. Yes.
So do we plan to have like respective SIGs down the line, or like it would be technical committee only?
uh, I think we will definitely have maintainer subgroups. So I guess I'm not sure, honestly. So the technical committee itself is supposed to deal with project wide issues that are technical. Whereas I think so far and because they would not be handling the day to day, right? For example, let's go to your website redesign idea of a working group. I think in our case so far, and how we thought of when it comes to our governance, we would have a subgroup of maintainers. They're, for example, called like Flatcar website maintainers, right? And they would be mainly concerned with the website itself. And as long as their decisions are not, or more like they're just doing their work, working on the website, and if they encounter a question, a decision they have to make that is bigger in scale, right, than just a simple refactor, that's when they would talk to the committee, like the steering committee or the technical committee. I think this is so
Right.
far my understanding,
Yeah, that's a right approach in my opinion as well.
because I'm just I'm afraid we would have too much voting essentially if we were to we're not that big of a project where this is, I think, needed just yet, right? So
So we can have. So the thing is that working groups could be small. You don't need voting and all in that. Maybe for the beginning, once we grow, we could have that. But maybe all the working groups come under the technical working group charter. And if there is a clash or there is a mismatch, and suppose there is a major refactor happening and that would affect
Mhm.
other working groups as well, in that case the technical committee would be the group that would be taking the overall decision on, so that they keep all the groups aligned, something on those lines. And yeah, I think that's where they would come into the picture. Not day-to-day technical activities, but more on like resolving conflicts and seeing that the overall health of the projects is going the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we can compare it to, uh, if we were to compare it with the steering committee, right? Similarly, that they're not doing day to day, right? But like, let's say there are two maintainers that have completely opposing ideas on how to implement something, right? And there's just no consensus being reached, right? That's where they can also escalate that to technical committee. And also creating any kind of a working group, like you mentioned, is. Hi, Alexi.
Hey.
We're going through the document. Right now, we're at the technical committee charter, just explaining it more or less. So far, we're going through all of these, reading it, explaining more or less what is the impact, and I guess later we're going to be gathering and writing down opinions about each.
We haven't gotten to the questions yet, then.
Well, just briefly mentioning some of them, but not in a solid way. So like you said, Cyan, a working group can be created later, because this is something that this committee would have in its power, right? It's just that right now we do not plan for any, creating the steering and technical committee themselves are big enough. Yeah, so let's see. Yeah, so the mission of the technical one is the technical leadership, right? Resolving disputes, and basically being an equivalent of the steering committee, however, in the technical space of our work. So the responsibilities, the scope, it handles the technical. Sorry, there's so much thinking today. It handles the technical responsibilities of the project, right? So, for example, setting and defending the technical direction and architecture of the project, owning and maintaining the process of forward technical proposals, design reviews, architectural decisions, or similar project-wide technical processes, right? Something that is critical, something that is impactful across the project itself at large. Defining project-wide technical standards and conventions, resolving technical disputes or escalations that cannot be resolved within a single subgroup, right? So, for example, imagine that, like I said, one maintainer wants to do it this way, the other that way. They cannot come to a conclusion, right? This is where they would escalate it to. Or, for example, when it comes to the critical decisions, for example, imagine that we need to migrate our infrastructure, right? And we have two choices of cloud providers, right? This is where proposals would be submitted, right? And that committee would, at the end, make a decision. Coordinating technical direction across repositories, subgroups, and cross-cutting initiatives. That is omitting the day-to-day. It's more about the overarching decisions and cooperation. Advising the steering committee on technical implications of non-technical decisions. Thank you, Tilo. All right, is your escalation note ready?
Yeah, it's just a few sentences.
Let me see. Oh, it's linked. Nice. Okay, so this is a note from Tilo. Escalations are used to resolve misalignments and are always agreed on by involved parties. All parties must at a minimum agree on the fact that a blocking problem exists that cannot be resolved between parties directly, and mediation of the steering committee is required.
So, I mean, this kind of a safety measure to make any of the committees kind of a target of, single-sided lamentations and complaints and whatnot. We're a community, and we should always strive to speak with one voice. And in order for an escalation to be successful, the involved parties need to agree that this is something that they can't handle, right? Like, this is kind of the important point. Like, at a point where we had all options, and we just can't come to an agreement. Committee, please help.
Mhm.
And then this gives the committee a position where they can focus on the meta layer and basically figure out what the friction points are between the involved parties, which is what it should do, and also help the involved parties to come to a conclusion and accept a shared responsibility for whatever decisions are. So if Lexi proposes something, some technical direction, and I'm okay in principle, but I wouldn't, want to lose my head about it, then the steering committee or the technical committee can tell basically everybody involved, no, the whole project supports that. You're good. Like, no one will be blamed. Something like that. Give reassurance to folks for like large decisions.
Thank you for clarifying that. So I guess TLDR, it's not for like lamentations and he said, she said, but it's for mediation, right? I think that's a good point. Okay, so moving to the next one, what the technical committee does not do, which is very important, and this is something we also took into account from your feedback. So they did not do it day to day, right? Therefore, the major overarching decisions. So, for example, you do not need the technical committee to review and merge decisions, or create, rename, archive repositories, set up CI bots tooling, and normal engineering automation, right? Back fixes, ordinary technical work, you will not be slowed down. Lexi?
Sorry, because we were just talking about escalations. Is there a reason why we need to call it that? Like, because escalation sounds very combative. I don't know. And this is just my opinion, because we were saying that it's more of like a mediation tool. I know it's a minor thing, but sometimes that might instill more negativity into the entire process if it's called escalation instead of maybe elevate or a review or a consult, something that, and this might be a minor thing that we can talk about, but I'm just thinking if the whole point is to have more of an involvement and a conversation.
I like the input. This is exactly the kind of misconception that I wanted to prevent with the little addition that I had. But you're right. Maybe we call it mediations, and then have a like basically use the 3 sentences I put in for escalations to explain that a mediation is what might otherwise be called an escalation, but in this case it isn't because of the bad subtext the word can bring. I love it. Good input.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, exactly. I'm surprised that in most projects it is that, because it does instill this kind of air of like, yeah, combative like feelings. Anyway.
Would this be okay as a comment to post?
Yeah, and I'm gonna kind of look into maybe a word, but like I think mediation is fine.
Yeah, we can clarify in the explanation of what a mediation is, right?
Yeah.
That it's otherwise known as escalations. I might be able to shed some light on why it is called escalations in other projects.
Yeah. It's a question.
No.
If it's how everybody does it, then obviously we can. But it's just a thought, because it does seem like a very like even like the definition of the word is quite negative. So.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody does it is some of the worst reasons I've ever heard.
Everyone is doing it.
I think I know why other projects might call it that. They don't have kind of your area of input. They're just us, right? And this is kind of this is how we want to be different as a community. So that's a very great point.
Okay, great. Happy to help.
Thank you. This is genuinely, very important actually. Because, for example, for me, when I hear escalation, I'm thinking about a ticket that is stuck, in some kind of a Jira queue, but yeah, this is mediation. I think in our case is much better. Okay. Do we want to move on? Cool. So yeah, like I said, that committee is not supposed to slow you down. right? It's supposed to help you solve issues when you have them, like, for example, mediating when you cannot reach a consensus with a fellow maintainer, right? And any other issue you might have. The technicals, yes, when the matter is basically important and global for a project. Its relationship with other bodies is more or less as follows. This is also up for discussions if you not agree. Maintainer Council, that is just us, the maintainers. The technical committee operates within the authority delegated by the Maintainer Council and the project's governance. Maintainer subgroups continue to own their own areas. Technical committee coordinates across them and resolves cross-area technical questions, right? So this is something that we discussed with Cyan, right? So if we are working on a website refactor, right, as long as the work that is being done is not, project-wide implication of, for example, changing our brand image, right? This is not something that they would take into account. If there was like a branding change, we would go to the steering committee. If there was a major technical change of, for example, how something is, well, it's kind of hard to come up at, right now, but like you get the point, hopefully. That's if there was something major, you would go to the technical committee. The steering committee handles non-technical governance. So the technical committee is supposed to help the steering committee if one of their decisions has technical implications, right? For example, maybe the steering committee is talking to a cloud platform that would like to sponsor us, right? However, maybe because of that, we would have to do some technical work or something would change. This is where they would advise, right? And here are basically the same questions that we mentioned in the steering committee, right? Which is membership, right? How many seats? Is it an odd number, an even number? Who is eligible to candidate to vote, right? How many members? Is there a distinction between seats or not? What is the length of the term? Are they consecutive or not? What is the limit? It's these details that are, although important, can seem small. Next, this is basically the same thing as we discussed in the steering committee, so I don't think there's a point in repeating that. But basically, how are they making decisions, right? Like how many percentages votes do you need to pass a decision? What is the quorum? All of these X's that should be answered. We can either take from the projects like Istio or Kubernetes, or come up with something else entirely. Okay, and I think we reached the end of the draft document, and we will be able to start going through the questions and gathering feedback individually on all of them. So let me just pause here. And are there any questions so far? Someone would like me to repeat something? Maybe something wasn't clear. Anything? Okay, cool. So at this point, let me kind of do it 50-50 in a nice way. I think so. Okay. So in here, this is the post that is an overarching discussions post for the whole governance talk 2202. I'm gonna once again copy the link and just paste it in here. So what I would like you guys to do is start going through it on your own. I'm gonna do 3 minutes break and basically come back to you, and we can start going through these one by one, discussing, gathering feedback, and basically just going through it. And hopefully by the end, we'll gather enough where it's sizable and discussions can either start or a compromise can be reached. Is that okay?
Yeah. Are we gonna have maybe like a for some of them is going to
Mhm.
be discussions. Is there like a poll feature?
Mm,
You know what I mean? Because some of them
Mhm.
are open-ended, some of them are more yes and no. And
So,
rather than
mhm.
going through every single person
Yes.
being like, yes, no, yay, nay, it would, and maybe
What-
I'm just
mhm.
not seeing it.
No, that's a good question. There is no poll feature. However, what I think we could do is you can post one of these separately, right? Like this here, for example, and
Oh, and do the thumbs up, thumbs
yeah,
down.
exactly.
Cool.
I'm not aware of any other feature in GitHub. There maybe are some like bots, but I'm not aware of it,
That's
unfortunately.
okay. That's okay.
So,
I
for
just wanted
example, we can say like,
yeah,
yay,
know
or
which
nay.
one we're gonna do. Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'm gonna be back in 3 minutes. See you guys. Okay, I'm back. So I'm thinking now, Lexi, based on what you suggested, maybe I should repost all of these questions separately as a message. That way everyone could like comment on it directly. Because I think, for example, here, right, I can individually reply to each message. So
Yeah.
that way everyone could reply individually to each one of the questions.
Yeah. But should we maybe do it one at a time first
I
here?
can just start copy pasting them, and you guys can start discussing them in the
Okay.
meantime.
Okay.
What do you think? Because it's gonna take me some time to do it.
Yeah, it is. I could also do the posting if you want, but it doesn't matter. Hold on, I'm just trying to.
Your guys' feedback, honestly, for me is more important.
Yeah,
So
it's more
I can do
important,
it.
exactly. So
So
let's actually just start with the top. Yeah, I'll take
so,
over the questions, and then
Mhm.
people just can have a discussion. So let's start with the overall structure. So the first question is, should Flatcar have both a steering committee and a technical committee? What problem are we trying to solve by creating two committees instead of continuing with the current maintainer-led model? And maybe, yep, go ahead, Cyan.
Can't we do this in like a doc or something so that people can just comment?
we could. I can. Tila, yes.
That's a good point. But
Would you guys like a doc?
yeah, I think
Okay.
that makes sense. And
Yeah, it might be a little bit easier to find questions because if we do one at a time on GitHub, like, and there's so many questions, I think that is really valid, Cyan. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, my browser would just crash loading that.
Oh yeah, right. That's true. It's gonna be quite a
Yeah,
lot of GitHub
okay.
to load.
That makes sense. So maybe, and it saves you work on trying to get one at a time.
Okay, let's see. All right, of course. However, there's a way to do it.
So while you're doing that, I think I just want to give a little bit context into why we're doing this. And I'm a little late, so I'm not sure if we have talked about
I think we did
reason.
a little bit, but
Okay.
so many people joined in the meantime that you can
Just kind
mention
of,
it again.
yeah. So essentially, there is just a lot of Microsoft maintainers at Flatcar. So the CNCF have asked us to kind of review how we are governed. They have had a situation in the past where one of the projects ended up taking itself out of the CNCF, and it caused a lot of problems. And it's because they were led by one company, and the company kind of took over and made the decision. So that is why we kind of need to make a steering committee so that there's a little bit more, there's a little bit less power concentrated in one company. So it is, without this, it will be very hard to go for graduation, which is something that will benefit the project externally and internally. So that is, and of course, having steering and a technical kind of feels like the technical side will be kind of a little bit more autonomous, whereas the steering committee will have a little bit more dealings with like governance as far as like CNCF is concerned. So yeah. Tilo.
another way of looking at it is this is basically just exemplifying how we want the project to be